Storytelling emerged with us. It's our longest tradition and oldest necessity to share pieces of ourselves, to create records of our beliefs and experiences, and then share them to incite connection and dialogue. Stories require a person's voice, a platform to share, and a listening ear. But I fear that in a world in which we have so many opportunities to share our perspectives, we've forgotten to listen to others. These stories give images to ideas, faces to change, and they've given me a purpose. There are so many stories to tell, and so many to hear. So join me as we delve into current issues and foster conversation by speaking through stories.
About 33,000 people are killed and 80,000 are injured each year in gun-related incidents. These also kill about 2,046 children under the age of 17 each year, and about 344 mass shootings occur every single year. These are the truths of gun violence in this nation, which impacts everyone every day. While individuals killed and injured in shootings are publicly remembered and mourned, victims of these tragedies are not limited to those present during these events. The consequences of gun violence are more pervasive than this and affect entire communities, families, and children. Every time there's a shooting or a gun death, it hurts all of us. Approximately 44% of American adults, or 142,176,105 citizens, report knowing someone personally who has been shot. And nearly 25%, or 807,818,078 citizens, report that they or someone in their family has been threatened or intimidated by a gun. Furthermore, about 3 million American children witness gun violence every year. With this many people being impacted every day by the issue, it has began taking the national stage as a heated discussion with many strong beliefs and experiences. Yet the conversation surrounding gun violence and the best response to the problem America is facing is increasingly polarizing. While seeking out different perspectives for this episode, I found that those on every side were searching for an open and respectful dialogue from people of all standpoints. However, while capturing their interviews, we did run into some instances where others were not keen to a different perspective than their own.
What a bunch of bull. Seriously?
We're trying to do an interview over here.
Yeah, it's a bull.
We can talk afterwards.
We can talk afterwards.
Can you respect the journalist trying to?
People are dying, and you want me to respect that?
We want you to respect the journalist who's talking to us.
We're more than happy to have a conversation after the interview.
Yeah. It's bull.
That's fair.
Through these frequent experiences, many of the advocates and lobbyists I spoke to were adamant that a two-sided discussion is vital to tackling the issue of gun violence and hope that one will emerge soon.
People don't want to have a dialogue. They want to shout their opinions without actually having a discussion. Some of the most interesting discussions and respectful discussions that I've had is with people who disagree with me. And I welcome that. I want to see their point of view, and I want them to see my point of view, and shouting that my point of view is bullshit is not in the furtherance of a dialogue.
I just think that we become very tribal, like, there's the gun owners and then there's the non-gun owners, and no one wants to come in the middle, or at least that's the belief. But there are plenty of people in the middle, and the majority of people are in the middle.
I think you learn a lot about a person when you argue with them, and I enjoy that part. As long as it's reasoned, as long as it's reasonable and polite, and you respect each other's positions.
Sometimes people don't think, they just feel.
We're just looking for legitimate, honest dialogue.
So let's create one, a discussion including everyone's viewpoints and suggestions so that a middle ground can be found and we as viewers can see the information and opinions presented to us and form our own informed conclusion on the matter. This is Speaking Through Stories.
All right, welcome back. We're continuing to follow breaking news.
We should warn you, what you're about to hear could be disturbing.
We start with breaking news, tragic news. Parkland consistently voted one of the safest communities.
Viewers a sense of what you're seeing.
When the 911 calls started coming in.
More than 400 people in the hospital. There has been a deadly shooting. Footage of a deadly shooting.
Investigating a deadly shooting.
Will not face charges for the deadly shooting.
Police are investigating a deadly shooting.
Shootings have become a dark stain on American life.
We cannot accept this.
The bodies have not yet been removed.
3 hours of terror overnight, multiple shootouts, hostages.
I got under the desk and then they just started coming in the library and opening fire.
Crime scene tape is still up here. Do you remember hearing the gunshots?
People here are still reeling from this. My condolences go out to the loved ones.
I don't even know if people are going to be able to walk back into school again and see empty chairs.
Walking into that class today and not seeing him was like my heart breaking all over again.
Oh my God!
Connecticut this year alone in Connecticut, 17 people have died from guns.
There's no understanding about the great trauma and grief that we feel here in Hartford, Connecticut. Every street corner, there's been blood spilled on every street corner.
I spoke with multiple Connecticut organizations whose missions revolve around this issue. CT Against Gun Violence.
We are celebrating our 25th year as an advocacy group. Our mission is pretty simple. It is to reduce gun violence in the state of Connecticut. We do that by grassroots organizing, legislative advocacy, and education.
CT Carry.
An organization devoted to defending the rights to bear arms. We specialize in training and education, things like that, trying to make the world a better place through armed people. We have a surprising amount of people that we try to help legally defend. Unfortunately, being a small organization and Connecticut being a little bit apathetic to our rights here, it's a little bit difficult to get a lot of people through our system, but we try to help the worst cases at least.
The programs that we have within CT Carry is really talking about the realities of self-defense, regardless of the tools that you may use in the furtherance of your self-defense or defense of a third party, is the realities of what's going to happen. It's an ugly business.
And Sandy Hook Promise.
We kind of set out to find our own lane in the highway, if you will, and to maybe address this problem in a different way. We arrived at this idea of preventing tragedies before they happen by training people how to recognize the warning signs that precede a tragedy, and then acting on those and knowing how to respond to that information. We offer our programs, say something, start with hello, signs of suicide, and safety assessment intervention at no cost. And so we make them easy to implement. We know that they work from evidence-based research, and we've eliminated any cost factor.
First, we delved into Connecticut's response to assault weapons. In June 1993, Connecticut became the third state to ever pass a ban on these firearms, and then in April of 2013 passed new restrictions as part of the demand for stricter gun laws after the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut.
It's not a true ban because you can still own them legally if you've registered them or if they're pre-banned guns. So it's not a complete ban. That was one of the things that we made sure in this legislature that we were that this session, what we were going to do is truly ban bump stocks, that there wasn't going to be a grandfather clause. If we're going to say we're going to ban them, but you can still have them, that's not really a ban. It's just preventing future sales. I think to allow military-style weapons in the hands of civilians is very problematic. I think to allow the citizenry to own these types of weapons is to feed into this irrational fear that the government is going to somehow come after its citizenry. And I understand that the original design of the Second Amendment was to allow a well-regulated militia to prevent some type of monarchy again, or some type of dictatorship or something like that, so that the citizens would be able to get a militia that's armed and to rise up against this kind of oppression. But this is a different time we live in. Back then they were talking about muskets. I don't think they ever envisioned that they wanted their citizens to own cannons, for instance.
How silly would it have been to tell early humans that you can use a rock, but you can't use a spear. You can use a spear, but you can't use a crossbow. How silly is that argument? The same argument stands that you can have this type of gun but if it weighs more than 50 ounces, you can't have it.
When we talk about technology, what good does it do? Because when we talk about laws that prohibit technology, the only thing you're ever going to prohibit is the people who voluntarily prescribe to that. Those are our members. Our members try to follow the laws. Whether they should or not is an argument for a different topic, but when criminals go to do something violent, I don't think they sit there and think about the tools that they're using and whether they're going to match up to the laws or not. So why take the technology away from good people who want to defend themselves? You're never going to take it away from the people who are trying to commit violence.
There's no legitimate purpose to having an assault-style weapon in your home. You know, the harm to society is greater than the utility of having these types of weapons. And as we see, what is the weapon of choice amongst these mass shooters? It's the AR-15. And why is it the AR-15? Because it's a very easy to use, very lightweight, fairly inexpensive, very effective killing machine that was originally designed by Eugene Stoner as a weapon to be used in the Vietnam era. It's been slightly changed, but it's basically the frame of the weapon is something that was designed for war.
One of the ways in which people have been evading assault weapon restrictions is purchasing or crafting their own ghost guns, which are partially completed receivers or frames that do not yet reach the federal definition of a firearm. These partially completed receivers are sold without a background check and then completed by the buyer, resulting in an untraceable firearm without a serial number.
What a ghost gun is supposed to be is preventing people from manufacturing their own tools. That's really what it comes down to.
Ghost guns are unregistered, unlicensed, unserialized guns that you can build in your home. You can buy them online without a background check, without a gun permit. And you can even buy AK-47s and AR-15s and numerous amounts of handguns. And these are not regulated under federal law. This is a loophole.
It's private property. It's personal property. When people talk about this stuff, they talk about, well, should he be allowed to have a firearm? Should he be allowed to have this or that? The concept of private property was one of the major things that founded this country. It's one of the major parts of the concept of liberty.
Why we would allow access to those kinds of weapons without any type of background check is beyond me.
Those loopholes should be closed. Just like the background check loophole should be closed.
Background check, as it applies to a pistol permit, is certainly not a talisman that says this person's never going to commit a crime ever again or ever with this tool or instrument that they've manufactured.
It's not about access of guns to anyone. It's about making sure that people who shouldn't have guns don't have guns. How could you possibly do that if you're going to let people just go online and order a handgun and they can build themselves in their house?
Manufacturing firearms actually has a whole set of laws behind it, and to sell that or to distribute that, you actually have to put a serial number on it, you have to get a license, you have to do all that stuff.
Although there are laws encouraging those who manufacture guns to serialize them in order to sell them, there is no requirement if the gun is not complete. The guns are often sold in kits with all the necessary pieces, so under existing law, when they are shipped, they are not considered guns. Licensed sellers are also not required to keep sales records of unfinished gun kits and components, and when the buyer then assembles the firearm, it is lethal and legal.
Please tell me how many crimes have been committed with that piece of contraband from a home manufactured firearm.
In California, in 2017, a gunman killed his wife and 4 others with a home manufactured firearm after being ordered to give up all of his guns due to a restraining order. Additionally, in California, a murder-suicide involving college students in Walnut Creek, a shootout between hostage-taking bank robbers and Stockton police officers, as well as a mass shooting at Santa Monica College in 2013 by a student who was prohibited from owning a gun, have all been crimes committed with ghost guns. Just this month, the head of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms in Los Angeles
reported that approximately a third of all weapons they now routinely recover are self-made. This past March, House Bill 5540 was proposed in Connecticut to ban ghost guns, but was not called for a vote during that legislative session.
We had the votes to pass it. It would have passed had it been called.
The Las Vegas shooting in October 2017 resulted in 59 people, including the shooter, killed and 422 injuries. The shooter's ability to target this many people at a rapid pace was aided by bump stock technology. Soon after, Connecticut and many other states began demanding a ban on bump stocks, the piece of metal or plastic that enables the shooter to fire rounds much faster than they would normally be able to with a semi-automatic rifle. The response to this, Connecticut's gun shop saw a huge spike in bump stock sales immediately after the story broke.
There's always some kind of jump, there's always some kind of new interest. And the reason, in my opinion, and I think it's pretty obvious, is it's because all of a sudden everybody starts talking about taking away your rights.
The rise in gun sales after mass shootings has to do with the fact that people are worried that the response is to regulate guns. So what happens is people think that they're not going to have a bump stock. So what happens after all of those people were killed in Las Vegas? People run out to the stores to buy the bump stock.
The House Bill 5545 was the second gun control bill during this past legislative session. Its aim was to ban the bump stock for good in Connecticut.
It's a no-brainer. I mean, this is a device that has really no utility to benefit society. What it's designed for is to make a semi-automatic weapon into a machine gun. Now, why would somebody want to do that? To kill more people. Let's face it, guns are lethal. There's no way to make a gun that shoots bullets non-lethal. That's the design of the gun, is to make it to kill.
Something like a bump stock turns a legal machine into something that's illegal.
When you're taking a bump stock, that is not used for target shooting. That's used to increase the lethality of a weapon, to shoot as many rounds as that weapon can shoot, above and beyond what a person normally is capable of shooting. So what utility does that have? Is that benefiting society? No, it's just making it more likely that there's going to be a mass shooting. It's making it more likely that someone's going to use it to kill people.
Bans and prohibitions in legislation have been a contentious point for many CT organizations.
I think we've seen the effect of prohibition laws in our country, whether it be alcohol, drugs, various things. Things that are sought after, things that are easily concealable, things that can be made by human beings. A marijuana plant can be grown, a gun can be manufactured in a garage. It's kind of a silly notion to place prohibition laws on those things. Murder's illegal. With that, we all agree with that. Connecticut Carry agrees with murder being illegal. Those kind of things are already prevalent in our society. That was already natural law.
Passing a law that bans something that is responsible for killing as many people as were killed in Las Vegas is important for us as a society to say enough's enough.
CT Carey spoke to me about their frustration with Connecticut's gun control efforts.
Kind of given up on our legislative aspect. We realize that the legislature and the lobbying efforts in this state are probably a lost cause. Always have been, really.
I would say the laws going against self-defense or infringing on the liberty of people have been going on for just about 80-something years now. There's been a number of laws starting in the 1930s that limited people's lawful access to legitimate tools for lawful self-defense or hobby or collecting or any number of different things. So it's been a slow turning of the dial, so to speak. We think it's immoral that I can't possess tools to affect that self-defense or defense of a third party. Does that make me more prone to violence because I all of a sudden possess something that is in a configuration that is deemed contraband? People are bad, people are good, and the things that are restricted or allowed are not tipping the scale to good or bad. I'm old enough to hear the refrain that this is going to solve gun violence, this is going to solve gun violence, this is going to solve gun violence, and quite frankly, it hasn't. We've been lied to, is really what it comes down to. And if we look at bump stocks, we look at ghost guns, we look at permitting, we look at assault weapons ban, magazine restrictions, permitting process, manufactured weight limitations, design characteristics, serial numbers, going back to then the Gun Control Act of 1968, going back to the National Firearms Act of 1934, it has not solved gun violence. It is just a further erosion of our natural rights to select the tool that is more appropriate or most appropriate for my lifestyle and my circumstances.
Pro-gun advocates may be disheartened by CT's legislation. Those calling for stricter gun laws are equally disheartened by federal policy.
There isn't a lot going on the national level. In fact, they haven't passed a single gun violence prevention law since Sandy Hook, which is quite shocking. The legislative work that's been done for gun violence prevention has only really existed on the state level since Sandy Hook.
One reason that is suggested for the lack of federal gun laws being passed is the influence of gun lobby donations on campaigns, elections, and bills supported or negated in Congress.
I think that the NRA and other pro-gun lobbies have way too much influence over our government. There's no question. Whether they have a hold on our government is something to be determined, and I think we're going to find out the answer to that at the next election. There's no question that they have influenced a lot of political races. There are political candidates who owe a debt to these gun lobbies, and our president is one of them. So if you think that anyone, including the President of the United States, is going to be given $30 million, and then he's not going to have to repay a debt for that money, I think that is being naive. So we can see it by his actions. He has done practically nothing, and he has catered to the NRA even after all of these mass shootings.
With the current state of legislative progress, how can we most effectively respond to gun violence as a state and nation?
People don't know that they can be part of the equation to have a sustainable difference and impact, especially in this problem. Or that they don't think that they would have an impact, that they know that the problem exists, but they don't know what to do. They feel hopeless. You do have a voice, and you do have an impact. Whether that's helping us bring our programs into schools and communities, or if it's inspiring people to write letters to their Congress people and their legislators. I know from the inside, from being in the halls of Congress, both at the state level, across the country, and in the federal government, that the legislators do keep record of who's calling and on what issue and what their position is. And so every call and every email and every point of contact that you can make to your elected officials really does matter.
I think that really the voters of the United States have to vote those politicians out who are not here to protect our citizens. There's a difference of opinion about what that means. I mean, the people who voted for him feel like he is protecting the citizens because he is pro-gun and he's going to protect the rights of gun owners. But as we've seen, having guns only creates more gun-related deaths. I think that is the responsibility of our government and the responsibility of our president to do something about it.
The event that sparked change in Connecticut, causing it to become one of the most active states in lobbying and protesting against gun violence, as well as one of the states with the most gun control legislation, was the shooting that killed 20 children and 6 staff in a town close to home. The shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in December of 2012 shook Connecticut to its core.
It was disbelief, I think, my reaction when it was hard to believe that could possibly happen. I must have looked at my phone 10 times just questioning whether that was a real thing. I mean, you can't imagine that 20 infants, practically, toddlers, were murdered, in a matter of minutes. Unfortunately, I think now it's no longer disbelief. I think now it's become a reality.
The other instance of gun violence of particularly large significance, which was brought up frequently, was the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting in February last year.
What was important about Parkland is that Parkland was almost identical to Newtown, Sandy Hook, in socioeconomic class and in the type of neighborhood that this happened in, the type of environment that this happened in, the age of the shooter. And I think that a lot of kids that were too young to really understand or quite grasp Sandy Hook in a way that was real for them we're suddenly thrust into this world.
I hope we have not become numb and desensitized to violence. It certainly seems to be increasing in frequency. But I think in the surge of youth activism that we've seen in the wake of the Parkland tragedy, I think is an indication that we haven't become numb.
The fact that, we had 13,000 people show up to a march in Hartford is significant in and of itself. The fact that probably a third of the people there were ages 18 and younger is dramatic.
Those students have witnessed this happening as they were youth coming up. They saw what happened in Sandy Hook. They were probably 10 or 12 years old when that happened. And then subsequent mass shootings, and they're watching this unfold in the news. And now it's happening in their own backyard in a high school. And I think that has just kind of kicked them into gear to say, look, this isn't fixing itself.
I think the stereotype is, well, they're apathetic and, they're in their own world and they don't care. And I think that the youth of America is proving that that's just not true.
Youth also have a unique opportunity to prevent shootings, especially within schools. This is reflected in Connecticut's gravitation towards prevention programs in academic institutions, led by the Sandy Hook Promise organization.
We have learned that people talk about this first before they take their own life, before they hurt themselves, before they hurt others. And with young people and with adults as well, they often talk about it in social media. So one of our programs is called Say Something, where we train students how to look for and identify at-risk behavior in social media platforms, and then to take the next step to tell a trusted adult. We're looking at this through a multi-generational lens, and this was, of course, we've identified this strategy long before Parkland. But we recognize that the youth are the eyes and the ears, and that we can train youth to train incoming youth and continue this cycle. The end result are these positive outcomes where you have a more inclusive, more connected community within the school, so that kids are looking out for each other. They're stepping up and helping somebody who's either isolated or exhibiting at-risk behaviors and getting them help. I think with the work that we're doing with Sandy Hook Promise, bringing these awareness programs into schools has a tendency to offset any kind of complacency by teaching kids the importance of looking out for each other, by teaching them to be a good upstander.
In 2018, there were 94 school gun violence incidents and 113 people were killed or injured. With this amount of school shootings, the focus on creating these connected, compassionate schools has increased. There are also some other ideas taking the national stage.
Arming teachers is an awful idea. I mean, we should arm teachers with better salaries and books, not firearms.
I don't necessarily look at having teachers as a condition of employment be armed, but I also would like to see the prohibition of carrying a firearm on school grounds removed so the individual teachers can make that decision on their own.
I think that if we're going to have armed people in schools, they should be highly trained police officers.
Teachers that I know, they would have no problem using force to stop violence against themselves or the students under their charge.
Are teachers human beings? Because I believe they are, and all human beings have a right to self-defense.
There is a lack of agreement about how gun violence should be responded to in Connecticut and the United States. But with the most recent statistic in 2016 recording that the U.S. has the 31st highest rate of gun violence in the world, with 3.85 violent gun deaths per 100,000 people, those on every side of the debate feel that there must continue to be response and change.
The best defense against violence against me is gunfire, unfortunately. And again, that's the reality that we live in.
You should feel safe in the communities. In certain places like Hartford, people don't feel safe at all times.
My job as a dad is to take care of my daughter.
There isn't just one solution to the gun problem. There's multiple solutions. The solution for school shootings is not necessarily going to end urban violence. Banning a bump stock might reduce the chance of a mass shooting, but it probably isn't going to do much for gang-related shootings in Hartford.
I'm a liberty advocate. I don't really care what it is. You should be able to possess it. I mean, you're a human being and you're subject to your own responsibilities and faculties. I want to see human beings free, and firearms, I believe, are one of the crucial parts to that.
Every time there's a mass shooting in the news, and I understand that there are shootings that happen every day, and children are dying in our streets of this country every day. It is discouraging, but it also keeps me aware that it's all the more important that I continue to do this work.
We need to make sure that Sandy Hook never happens again. Of course, what we've seen is that it has happened again.
We don't have to kill each other. You know, we can love each other. We can help each other. We can make this community grow. Killing has to stop. Let us live. Let them live. Instead of taking them away. When you rip them away, you rip a heart out. Mothers, love your children. Father, love your children. Children, love your parents. Because when they are gone, you don't get any more. Just keep loving.